Welcome back, everybody, to Managing Your Perimeter. I'm Mel Lukens, along with Anna Reel. Anna, how the heck are you? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Mel. You too. Although I woke up today and I was working on some emails, and apparently I got a message back that I had an attitude today. So I'm going to try not to have an attitude with this podcast and just make it work and see how we can get through this.
Well, as long as it doesn't show through on the voice, it should be good to go.
I'll be good.
Yeah, behave.
Always.
So what else is going on in your world?
Not much. You know what? I'm just trying to get through all of these things. I mean, you and I have been trying to figure out how we're going to make managing your perimeter work a little bit better, but we're also just hanging out. I went to a couple concerts this week. I also had a chance to see my kids, which I don't get to see often. And I know that you and I at least share that. You've got your two boys. What are they doing these days?
Yeah, I got one of them still at home, but heading back probably to California in the not too distant future. And one who's a teacher down in Jackson, Mississippi, teaching middle school. So it's part of a Teach America program that he's involved with. I mean, and getting his master's in teaching. So he's making a contribution that I'm very proud of him for.
That's awesome. That's great. Oh my God, that's wonderful. Yeah, I know. David being on the road with a country artist also. I mean, we just do nothing but be proud of our kids as they continue to navigate this world and what they're doing. So anyway, we're back and we're doing this again, managing your perimeter.
Speaking of how to navigate.
Speaking of navigation, on today's podcast, we have Salem Strategies. We have Hannah Salem and Virginia Beckett. They're female business owners, and they join forces to offer their clients a dynamic opportunity to engage audiences and amplify their message. What does that mean? They have 40 years of combined experience in strategic communication. These women have traveled to all 50 states and 30 countries and supported every type of event, from presidential events to county fairs. Their services include experiential marketing, issues and crisis management, media relations, and public policy solutions. Welcome, Hannah and Virginia.
Well, Anna, thanks for having us on. We're excited to join your new podcast and be a part of the Argus Group and your mission to launch an amazing brand in the security and operations world. So I'm Hannah Salem. I am principal at Salem Strategies. We are a marketing group, an issues and crisis management, media relations and public policy solutions business. We touch on almost anything and everything that a client needs from us. And then this is Virginia Beckett.
I'm Virginia Beckett, and I am founder of Beckett Events, which is an experiential marketing firm, an event design company, event production. We do a lot of hands-on event work, as well as the overall marketing of your event and how your event comes off for your guests, as well as maximizing your message. So Hannah and I have teamed up together to make that one big experience for our clients.
That is actually super. And so by way of kind of a history, Hannah and I go way back. We've traveled internationally together and suffered the slings and arrows of planning major international events. I won't go into the sordid details of all of them, but one of the things, Hannah, that you brought up that really is appropriate and timely right now is crisis management. And I'm just kind of wondering how much, with the two kind of major crises or challenges that are going on right now with COVID and with Afghanistan, can you talk about any of the stuff that you've kind of been involved in and how you're managing that? Obviously, we can't get into who you're representing, but if there was a 30,000 foot view that you could kind of give to that, I think that would really be interesting.
Sure. Yeah. So like Mel said, we used to travel all over the world together. Anna, you and I as well.
Yes.
In my former life, I was a special assistant to the president and director of press advance at the White House under President Trump. And I spent 3 years traveling to, I think I did almost 180 domestic and 44 foreign stops during that 3-year period. A few of those are with you two. I left the White House in February of 2020 to stand my company back up. I started almost 8 years ago next month.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. We immediately kind of stepped into a unique arena with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and found ourselves in a situation where we had to rethink what type of operations and comms and public policy solutions that we were offering to clients and how we would recruit this new client base. And so Virginia and I teamed up during that time and started work on helping open mass vaccination clinics across the nation, specifically in 3 very large states, Texas, Virginia, and Florida. As part of that, not only the operational side of it, working with the communities, government, local authorities, along with learning the new ground game for COVID-19. And so I'll kind of throw it to you, Virginia, because you're kind of the brains behind the operations of what we were able to accomplish during that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the work that we did for COVID is really not that different from the type of work that we always do in trying to, it really comes down to creating a guest experience that is positive. So especially in the time of COVID, when people are scared and they're nervous and everything feels like an unknown. But that's kind of the same when you're creating a guest experience for an event, a big concert, a rally, anything like that. You just have to put yourself in the guest's shoes all the way from the beginning. So, think about what you do when you're going somewhere. The first thing you do is you look up the address. Do I have my ticket? Do I have my confirmation? And you just backtrack as the person who's planning that, how you can make that experience great for them from the start. So you make sure that they have all of the details they need once they step foot. Even, for me, I think about it as the experience starting once they step foot into their car or onto the bus or onto the sidewalk when they're walking towards your event. That's where you need everything to start pivoting towards a positive experience to your event. And again, sometimes you can't control that. You can't control that there's construction on 95s or they're stuck in traffic for 4 hours. And 4 hours is a long time, but I guess not really in DC. I mean, but that's something that we have to mitigate for. So we make a plan for every worst case scenario that there is. We don't want Kathy showing up at our event saying that there was traffic on 95 because of the directions that we gave, and now she's late for her appointment and she's going to miss it because she's going to see that as our fault. So, really just trying to mitigate every possible thing to go wrong.
Managing thousands of people coming into one place, one structure, one perimeter, whether it's the South Lawn or it's a abandoned business that we're building out from scratch, it's all the same. And the guest experience is all the same, and all the things that you have to work on to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch, from the safety, happiness of all the guests coming in. And so we really took what we've done in the past with more high-level principled events and applied that to these mass vaccination clinics.
Well, it's interesting, Hannah, because I'm listening to you talk about these vaccination clinics, and I just attended a concert, and actually it was the ACM, the Academy of Country Music Party for a Cause. It was at the Ascend Amphitheater in Nashville, and there were probably a dozen artists that came out to perform, and every single one of those artists started their show with talking about how grateful they were to see people in the audience, how grateful they were that their crews and their staff behind the scenes were able to come out and do these shows with them. And then, of course, contrary to that, as I was entering this particular venue, there was a line around the corner for people that needed to get rapid tested in order to come in, because you could only enter if you showed your vaccination card. And if you didn't, you had to get in line for a rapid test. So I think that there are a lot of people out there that are extremely grateful for those vaccination centers that you did, because I think you were able to utilize a lot of people in the industry to help you figure out how to coordinate those. And I think that's wonderful. And I was really happy to hear that during this concert and during this show, them talking about how their staff gone out and done these things. And it was nice to see. And it was nice to see it all sort of come full circle, because I've known what you've done. So I was really happy so I thank you very much for that.
Hannah and Virginia, I mean, do you see rolling downhill from the vaccination centers to the concert example that Anna just gave? I mean, do you see that as kind of this is how we get back to a new normal?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in the spring, one of our clients turned to Nashville for help. It seems like an unusual match, but it was really the secret sauce in running a seamless vaccination operation. Most of you don't know, and or maybe do know, but what we do in the advanced world in operations for political people and corporate people is kind of the same when you're building out large concert experiences. And so turning to Nashville was kind of a no-brainer when it came to finding the most elite trained team of tour managers to help support getting these off the ground as quick as possible.
Well, can you elaborate a little bit on that without revealing any confidential information? When you say turn to Nashville, who did you turn to? And was there an expectation that you already had kind of preconceived or already baked in?
Yeah, so I think when we say turn to Nashville, just to give a little bit more of that backstory. So when we were opening up these mass vaccination clinics, every clinic had a project manager who was responsible for the day-to-day operations of these clinics. You know, Hannah and I supported in getting them stood up, but we really needed an experienced individual on the ground to be able to pivot quickly, you know, when there were 1,500 people instead of 1,000 people, or, a light went out, and there are so many things that could go left. So we had some connections to someone who knew a handful of tour managers in Nashville who were at home. They weren't on the road because concerts weren't taking place. And these tour managers, they have the same capabilities and the same way of thinking that advance and operations staff do, where you have to move people quickly in a good experience, in a safe way, and also be hospitable. I think the Nashville crew really hit the nail on the head with that hospitality thing as well. I think that's something that a uniqueness that Nashville brings, not to say that us DCers aren't hospitable, but I think that
well, we're hospitable in a different way.
But this Nashville crew, they really made people feel comfortable. So we took these tour managers who weren't working at the time, couldn't be out on the road, and we brought them in to be the project managers on our vaccination clinics. And it was a really positive experience for everyone around. And we were just so thankful that to be able to have their experience. And, it did come at the cost of them because they couldn't work. We could use them. So we were happy to keep the ecosystem going and keep things moving towards getting us back into those arenas and those venues.
That's an incredible story.
I think that's great. I think it's great. Hang on a second. No, I do think that's great, Mel, because where we don't dive into a lot is like our background. And I come from that music world, and I come from being a tour manager. And so I think it's really great to hear that those types of skill sets are recognized 100% and that they worked in your favor, and that people were able to pivot in that respect. And, in a time where everyone was trying to figure out, how are we going to pay for this? And how do we get money for this? And how do we keep that particular industry going? I applaud you guys. Thank you very much. I think that was great.
And the cross connect between what we collectively have done in the advanced world and what a tour manager does the line is not that black and white. It's like you say, we do a lot of the same things. I mean, people, perimeter, and planning. How do you get them in? How do you make them happy? How do you get them out? I mean, obviously are basics, but there are so many bullet points that come under that people don't peek behind the curtain. That's what I think sets some of these podcasts apart, is we're trying to give you a sneak peek, into, into the sausage making, as it were. And just to kind of stay on that theory, what were some of the major challenges, though, that you faced with running these vaccination centers?
That's a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
Virginia and I have always kind of marketed ourselves as your behind the scenes partner. And so we really were supporting this client operationally behind the scenes. And so no one knew what the right answer was when each state was standing up these vaccination clinics. And so there were a lot of fires to be put out, and there were a lot of incredible moments and people and stories that came out of these clinics as well. But, I would say, in advance, timing is everything. And so the short amount of time that this particular client had to set up these clinics was short of nothing but incredible that they were able to do it that quickly and successfully.
Yeah. And I think that, we as advanced operations people get so stuck in the mechanics of it. And it takes some time for us to take a step back and say, wow, this is really what I'm doing. Like, for example, when you're working on an event with a principal, I think that everybody has that moment where at the end of the event and you can take a deep breath, or maybe it's a day and a half after where you're like, whoa, like I stood in front of the leader of the free world and told him to go left at the exit sign. And that's really cool. And most people don't get to do that. But at the time when you're doing it, you're like, oh, I just have to get this person to this point and everything in 33 seconds. And that's all that matters. And it's the same thing with those COVID clinics. You're like, I'm just trying to get people in. We have to have a minimum of 5 minutes wait time for the check-in. And they need to move through the Disneyland line in 7.5 minutes. And then they need to get to the registration port and they have to be ready. So that's all we're thinking about. And I think we had this really beautiful moment after we had one day of it going well, where we just stopped and we were like, wow, this really is more than making sure people give me their birth date in 34 seconds. We're getting shots in arms, and we're bringing this country back to a place that we can be at full capacity again.
No, and that's an interesting kind of juxtaposition between telling a high-level politician, whether he's the president or, the UN General Secretary or the Pope, telling them what to do. That's a heady moment. Then kind of cross-connecting back to the vaccination centers in this time that we're in, those are really heady moments too, because what you're now doing is you're not really managing one person, but you're managing essentially a community, because you're getting those shots in arms and hopefully more shots in arms as we, move down the line to mitigate this particular problem. But the connections are all there. I'm really heartened to hear that story.
And I think that one of the things that really stood out to us in these vaccination clinics that was really, truly special to us, not to get cheesy for a moment.
No, be cheesy. Be very cheesy.
This is really, it's a global pandemic that we're on the cusp of dealing with this for 2 years now, close to 2 years.
Yeah.
Every single person who came into the doors of that vaccination clinic had a personal connection to the time that we're in. So unlike where you're just putting on a fundraiser or an event or a wedding, it's just an event. It comes and it goes, and it's not that big of a deal. But, every single person who walked through those doors of the vaccination clinic, they were there because their mom is immunocompromised and they haven't been able to hug her for a year, or that they lost a loved one. So this is really important. It's actually making me get a little emotional.
Well, no, I mean, you bring up actually a very good point, because, in our event world, when people walk in, they kind of know what to expect. It's a performance, it's a rally, it's a speech, it's something like that. With the vaccination center, you start with a set of apprehensions that people don't really know. Yeah, they've all gotten shots before, but they don't know they didn't really know what to expect. Is this going to work? Am I going to have, side effects? So when they came into the center, there was a little bit of anxiety already built in that is not normal.
All the emotions, people are relieved, excited, scared. And so it was important for us and this client to stay engaged in each of those local communities and making sure that there's, line of communication open to information and to feeling safe. And, and you guys know this as well as I do, a lot more goes into just creating an event and throwing stage down. You have to engage with the first responders. You have to engage with the local authorities and elected officials. It's a small part, but it's a very important part to the success of an event when you're coming into these small towns or large cities or other countries. And, those are relationships you keep forever. I always say, with some of the press that we've worked with, or, even you guys, when you go through a traumatic situation with someone, you're bonded for life. And I think that's one of the most unique parts of being in this advanced world is, you have these pocket of moments with other people that bond you for life.
So you just created a nice little segue into speaking of one of the events that you and I did together. And it was truly for me a seminal moment. And to put a little meat on that particular bone, Hannah, you were working on your press schedule, which was what, like 28, 29 pages of, logistics information.
So I think what Mel is referring to is the very first time he and I traveled out of the country together for the President of the United States. It happened to be the very first foreign trip for this past administration. While Mel is a seasoned advanced man, it was my very first foreign trip. And
AKA old.
Season's good.
Okay, seasoned. I'll take that.
While I've been in politics almost 20 years, advanced, that was my very first foreign trip. And I remember we're getting the briefing, we're inside the White House and we're all very excited. We're going to Rome. I've got the best trip out of this entire swing, right? They're using a lot of acronyms and moving very fastly through stuff. And I remember people in the room were like, okay, first question, what's an Oconus and who is Ron? So that's kind of the baseline for those of you who do not know who are listening in. Oconus is out of the continental United States and Ron has remained overnight.
And we refer, every time somebody brings up Ron in front of me, I'm going, you're talking about some guy in Chicago. So stop. It's an RON.
That was my baseline for Oconus for a president. And so, and with that, because we were so new, they only sent me for press.
Which again
is not the norm. That is not the norm. For those of
you who know, foreign advanced teams are usually fairly, 4 to 6.
More robust.
Yes.
So I'll kick it back to you, Mel, and let you tell the story you're about to tell.
So we were sitting in the staff office at the embassy. Embassy in Rome has space for it's a huge embassy complex. I mean, not only there are like 3 or 4 different entities that work out of that particular embassy. None the least. Well, I think the Vatican embassy was working out of there at the time, but there are a bunch of international organizations.
Yeah. The Holy See and Rome are both located in the same compound. I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, from the flowers and shrubbery outside to the unique ornate design of every room that's got some historic story or some of the most powerful people in the world have walked through. So our operations staff office was inside this beautiful building.
Right. Set up as a classroom, and we're there, it's 6, 7 o'clock at night. I know Hannah's been working on this press packet, which is very involved, extremely detailed, and it plots all the movements, where you're going, who's going, what you're going to do there, how long you stay there, when you're going to leave, how do you leave, where do you go? I mean, it had to have been, again, 20, 30 pages worth of a document. All of a sudden, I'm sitting over, I look to my left, and Hannah's sitting there, and I see literally tears coming out of her eyes.
Oh.
And I said, Hannah, what's wrong? She said, I just lost my entire document.
My government computer popped up with a blue frowny face.
Oh God. Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God. Blue frowny face. It's game over. There's no coming back from that. And so I will say, in my defense, Mel, if I may.
You may, absolutely.
I'm not too much of an emotional person. And so I did, you might have seen 2 tears down my face. And I excused myself to the bathroom and cried quietly in the bathroom stall like the female professional that I am.
For sure. No, you internalized it. I mean, I was trying, what can I do? Is there anything that I can do to be helpful? And the answer was no. So of course I left and went to dinner. But it was just that was such an incredible moment that you and I had together. The other one that I'll tell, I'm sorry, I'm dragging this on. We were both in Puerto Rico.
Oh, yes.
For the response to the hurricane. And I was actually working for Hannah, much to my somewhat displeasure. not because it's Hannah, but because I just didn't have as good a relationship with doing press advance as other types of advance. But I was on an aircraft carrier. Well, what the heck? It wasn't an aircraft carrier. It was an amphibious assault ship that was providing daily support into the citizens of Puerto Rico.
So the fun part about that, though, Mel, is that it was coming from Virginia to Puerto Rico, right? So we had to fly out on Huey's every day and land on this ship. And then the second time we went, I left Mel in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'll be back tomorrow.
Well, so thank God for the Navy and the Marines, because one of the things is infamous for any type of ship at sea is excellent food. So that was kind of worth it. So we're executing this event, and the president comes on board via Marine One. The press come in a Osprey helicopter, and so I'm escorting them around and doing something I'm not used to doing, but apparently wasn't that difficult. And Hannah said, "Oh, you won't have any
great job, Mel. You did a great job."
It was easy. But what I remember most was our exfil from Puerto Rico. Where someone who might have been walking around in tall grass or weeds might have gotten a somewhat major breakout on her legs that required a doctor to fly back with us.
I have completely blocked that out of my memory. We obviously had to trudge through some grass during one of the visits we did to a neighborhood, and I had an allergic reaction, and it actually went all the way, my entire body broke out in whelps, and I had to keep it together till the president was wheels up out of the country, out of Puerto Rico. And so after they were wheels up, I looked at the medical doctor and I said, I think something's wrong. and they had to me with not an EpiPen, but with, I don't even remember now. They were like, why didn't you say something sooner?
Because you go back to that, Hannah, because you're the professional and you're just going to go into that bathroom and cry very silently.
And again,
you're not going to let us know what is going on with you.
That is the definition of a strong woman. If it'd been me, I'd been crying like a baby and asking for any type of, salve or drugs that could eliminate this problem immediately.
I totally forgot about that, Mel. That's funny.
Sorry.
Anyway, that's your vibe. Only a few side effects I've experienced. So
sorry, we really digressed. I'm going to stop talking now. You take over.
The good part, though, is, Hannah, you live to tell it, right? You're living to tell us all about this, and here you are. And there's a lot of different stories. I mean, you and I have been to a few countries ourselves together, and I don't quite have the colorful story for you breaking out in hives, but
there's a slight chance I may have embellished too.
But for the most part, we all have a long history together. And, I'm just going to kind of wheel this right back a little bit to what we were talking about.
Yeah, please do, because I digressed.
With those events, though, as you and Virginia have worked on, there are some events that Arcus and you all we've worked together on, and we almost haven't known it because while we're focusing on the perimeter, you're focusing on the interior, and our checklists may be the same, they may be slightly different, but the bottom line is we don't want any bad actors to get in anywhere, and our job is to make sure that they don't, and your job is to make sure that the principals in there are kept safe and, your event goes off as seamlessly and flawlessly as possible. But I do look at those things and, just kind of jumping into a little bit of the meat of that, when you are looking at the interior and, for us, again, looking at the perimeter, we're looking at, how do we keep the city safe and how do we keep the bad actors out so that you all can manage your event properly? But what do you all think about when you're on the interior and you're looking at things so that the interior and the exterior can run pretty seamlessly? So just talk us a little bit about what you guys do when you're doing that.
Yeah, I think, that's really where we work together and don't even know it, but there's also this level of trust, right? We are putting a lot of our trust in you that all of the bad actors aren't getting past that front gate. We have set up multiple checkpoints, both exterior and interior, to make sure that they don't get in, and there's several opportunities to flag them down. But I think when we're on the interior, we're thinking about, I don't want to use the phrase bad actors, but bad actors in a different sense, like people who are welcomed into this space and welcomed into the event or wherever we are, but are going to make things a little bit hard, not only for people who are working there, but for everybody around them, or people who are lost, people who are struggling. That's what we're kind of searching for when we're looking at that interior perimeter. But it's so wide, right? Because we're looking for someone who, let's take, for example, something that's being taped. We want to make sure that there's nobody who's like crinkling a bag of snacks too close to a microphone.
Using cell phone,
I
somebody
was just looking for my potato chips.
Somebody who is too tall. That is one of the biggest things that you wouldn't think of, but there's someone who's too tall who's in your shot. And really just making sure that everything appears to be going seamlessly. We are on the background making sure that it doesn't look like we're melting down when things aren't going seamlessly.
No, the trick and the trick is make it seem even when you may be in the midst of disaster, don't let it show.
I think that's the number one rule. Everybody always says, like, if you need to get somewhere quickly, get there quickly, but don't run.
Right. No, 100%.
I tell my team before when I'm interviewing people or bringing on new people for the advanced world, I would say, listen, you got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's kind of your baseline. You know what I mean? Kind of going back to what Virginia is saying, one of the things that we focus on from either on the press side or the lead side is, making sure that there's a plan for the plan. Because whatever we've spent a week or a month or 3 days planning, it will go wrong.
Yep.
And making sure there's a plan for those plans. And so
plan for the worst and hope for the best.
That's right. And so, one of the things that you brought up was, making sure people aren't going to block camera views, right? Yeah. So like I would take someone like Mel, say, all right, Mel, I want you to stand on the third row and put your hands in the air and hold this sign.
Right.
And then if it doesn't cover up the camera view, the stage is the right height. And
That's
so
right.
Even something down to, that tiny to even what you guys are managing, which is more important, the security of the event, it all matters. And it takes one thing going wrong, one potato chip bag being crumpled to take the focus away from what the intent of the event is. And so that's really what we're doing on the interior to make sure that the focus stays on the principal or on the performer or the bride, whatever it may be, that it doesn't take away whatever's happening in the audience or around the perimeter interior, doesn't take away from the intent of the event.
And I think that it sounds so simple, but it's just being constantly alert and constantly aware. At these events, when you're working an event, you have an earpiece in with somebody constantly on the radio and it sounds like, and you're like, I have no idea what they're saying, and your phone is buzzing and there's a person in front of you asking where the third bathroom is because this one's dirty. And at the same time, all of a sudden you have to be able to hear like a bus that's backing up, their backup beeps are going to be caught on the recording. So you have to figure out how to stop that bus, get this woman to the bathroom, figure out what's being said in your ear, and like hope that nobody important is calling you, because
all while not running.
Yes, no running, definitely no running. And it's interesting too, when you guys are talking about that, because from us on the outside, once we get you all inside and we'll use, as we're talking about, presidential events at this moment, once the motorcade has passed us and once it's through our gates and once everybody's inside, we don't exactly take an exhale, but we do say, okay, that part of what we're working on is complete. Now we have to wait for the second half of this. We've got to get them all back out of there as safely as we got them in there, and ready to their destinations.
Yeah.
Right. No.
So the guard doesn't come down. That box is checked.
Right. Right. But it is interesting because we're all using, and you just said that, Mel, the box checking. We're all checking the same boxes on the interior and the exterior. You talked about local law enforcement early on, Hannah, and, we've got to work with them also. You're working on the interior to figure out what's going on the inside, but, we've got to figure out, how are they managing everything coming into the city, and, how does that all work together? So it is nice to see all of this together, and it is it's an interesting concept. We've said this 1,000 times on all of these podcasts. What happens on the inside and what happens on the outside is not much different. The boxes are the same. Our checklists are the same. What we're doing together, and it all helps each other, and it's wonderful to see all this. But something that I am going to sort of allude to, and Mel, you kind of talked about a little bit at the beginning of this, and we come into this in a mostly male dominated industry, right? I mean, on the security side, I get that. And I'm sure you guys get that from what you're talking about with comms and how you're handling things and tackling it. But give me a little bit of insight to that, because I'm still learning it, and I'm still trying to make sure, that I've got, the company that we're trying to push along. But you tell me, how do you guys navigate this? And what do you guys do with that?
Well,
notice Mel's going to be silent here, so please go ahead.
Mel, please.
I think this is a question that we get a lot, and there's no concrete answer to it, to be honest. I think that one of the things that benefits us greatly is our flexibility and our ability to handle 17 things at once. I don't want to say like women are better than men at that, because, I don't want to get canceled, but I think.
Oh, here we go. I'm shutting up again.
No,
but the fact of the matter, but the fact of the matter is I agree with you. Women, thank God we're recording this, so I'll have proof of it, are better multitaskers than men. I think that is a scientifically proven fact. Okay, now I'll go back to shutting up.
But I think that when it comes to how we handle being women in a male-dominated industry, I don't want to speak for Hannah, but for me personally, I just don't really think about it that much. I'm there to execute the mission. And it doesn't matter if I'm male or female, as long as I'm there to execute the mission and I'm doing my job and informing the people who need to be informed, they're happy. It's just keeping everybody happy and keeping everyone informed and working together. And it really doesn't matter if I'm a man or a woman or they, we just all have to work together, and everybody has to do their specific job, which I think is one of the things that I've always loved about the advanced world, is that we're not trying to get in each other's lanes. We actually very specifically do not want to get in each other's lanes, because I don't want to be responsible for some reporter not getting on their bus because I told them the wrong thing. So if someone asks me a question, I'm like, go to Hannah, that's not my lane, So I think that's what works well in the advanced world. Everybody stays in their lane and does the absolute most they can for that lane.
And I'll say this, most of the work that I've done over the last decade has kind of been politics mixed in for sure, but has really been with the corporate world and the military world. We are very fortunate to work with some incredible women that are CEOs and presidents and politicians. Mm-hmm. I think they would feel the same way we do, but we are very fortunate to be able to work and learn from these women as we're kind of carving out our careers. I'm only 20 years in, and I'm hoping to have a few more decades, but learning from these women and watching them navigate being a leader and being a manager is really priceless for us. And so I don't think it's really been a challenge now, but I think when I was younger, at 17, getting my start in politics, I definitely had to be careful and thoughtful about how I worked and interacted with teams and staff and bosses.
It really boils down also to, I want to be known for my results, not my sex.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, 100%. And you guys said it really, really well. And I've found that as I continue to host meetings and when they're with cities, it really is with mostly men in the meetings. But I've had the absolute pleasure and wonderful opportunity to also have my sons work with me. And those that know me know that I will talk about them endlessly and always and forever. They will be close to me. But they were in a meeting with me in Milwaukee, and we left the meeting, and I had another person on the team go to them, and they said, well, what do you think? And they literally turned to them and said, my mom is badass. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I really didn't look at it that way. But, because I went in exactly how you're saying it. I went in to do a job, to explain what we were there for, to manage why we were helping the city and that particular agency with something. And, it was just kind of a very interesting way for them to see their mother. But I was happy about that. And yeah, definitely. I was definitely happy about that. I don't look at it as so much of a male dominated industry, but it is, like you said, we just kind of go into our meetings knowing our subject matter and knowing our industry really, really well. And for us and for you as well, I'm certain they respect that. I see that. And it's been a nice way to be able to handle things. So it's nice that you're saying that.
You talk quickly and confidently and use a lot of acronyms. No one's going to question you.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it goes to the old adage, you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit.
Yeah, that's right. Works every time.
It truly does.
God.
Hey,
What does that acronym mean? I'm like, I don't know, I made it up, but we got it.
Yeah, what is that? Just Google it. You'll make something up. It'll work. But this has been fascinating. Hannah and Virginia, Hannah, it's great to reconnect with you. Virginia, it's nice hearing some of your stories as well. So if you had, 15 seconds to have your own kind of shameless plug for your companies, what would that be?
So we always joke around, and because we are a behind the scenes partner, I always say, don't call us, we'll call you.
But we don't mean that. You can call us.
Or they can leave a message. Just give us your number.
But no, we, we're on LinkedIn and all the fun things, but we keep a pretty ghost footprint on the internet. We're actually not really big on self-promotion. So this was a big deal for us to join you guys today and kind of talk about what we do around the world.
Oh, this is gonna launch you. I'm just telling you.
Oh boy. We're hoping.
Salem Strategies. I'm going to just keep saying it. Salem Strategies. Strategies.
We're about to hit 8 years, and I'm excited to be working with Virginia this last year. And I think that there's a lot more exciting things to come from us on joint partnerships and new business in the future. So we appreciate you guys having us on. And
thank you. Thank you so much. Really, your time is invaluable, and we appreciate it 100%.
So with that, I think we have kind of brought this episode to a close. And Anna, you want to talk about our next episode? Because I forgot.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay. And I also, before we actually wrap that up just a tiny bit, I do want to take a minute. What we don't do often enough is thank our behind the scenes people. And I would really like to take a minute here. And so we're going to take a minute to thank Marianne Gilflin. She handles our artwork that we use whenever we do any of our social media. We've got Chris Rakin, who snapped the photo of, yet again, a picture of my son at the back of his head that we use in all our social media. So he is very famous for the back of his head. Yes, of course not. And then my other son, David, who handles any of our editing, and he is working very hard at that. And he is on the road with a country artist, and so I get to see him whenever I go to concerts. So I'm very happy about that. And then we have Eric. He is our podcast producer. And so I thank you from the bottom of my heart, all of you, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do this. We're certainly happy to have everybody on our team with us. But for the next episode, we're going to talk about school security. Jason Russell from Secure Education Consultants is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And obviously with school starting and everybody trying to figure out how that looks, what the dynamic of that is going to be, mask, no mask, I don't know. And then he is an authority on keeping schools safe. He is a former Secret Service agent, and he pivoted to start a business to teach schools and teach companies what to do in the event of that type of crisis, either with an active shooter or not, which unfortunately we have to learn these days. So I thank you guys for listening. Please, Managing Your Perimeter, that's the podcast. We look forward to continuing this with you. We've covered a ton of subjects. We're going to keep going with this. We want you to use our social media to tell us all the things that you want to hear about, more about. How do we get in touch with you? And please, most importantly, how can we help you? What can we do to help you either on the perimeter or the interior? I mean, we're putting a lot of people on these shows that can help you in a lot of different ways. And we want to be able to provide that service and or services to you. So please don't hesitate. Managing Your Perimeter. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mel. We'll see you guys again next time.
Bye-bye.